The sky was on fire. Explosions lit up the dark clouds, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Kylara, the alien warrior, crawled across the ruined ground, leaving behind a trail of dark green blood. Her armor was cracked, her blade was broken, and her body felt heavier with each breath. She had fought bravely. Her people had fought too. But they had lost. The enemy was too strong. Their ships too many. Now, the battlefield was quiet except for the sound of distant fire. Kylara reached the edge of a destroyed bunker and collapsed against the wall. She looked up at the stars, blinking slowly. They were the same stars she had seen all her life, but tonight they looked cold, empty, like her heart. Her squad was gone. Each name still echoed in her mind: Vena, Theric, Sol. They had all fallen in the fight, and now she was the last one. She pulled off her helmet and let it fall beside her. The wind was cold on her face. Snowflakes began to fall from the smoke-filled sky, soft and silent, like tiny ghosts. Her chest burned with pain. She looked down and saw the deep wound across her ribs. Too deep, too much blood. She wouldn't make it. She reached for the emergency signal beacon on her wrist, but it was smashed. Her ship was gone, her squad gone. Her mission failed. No one would come for her. Kylara's eyes started to close. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wasn't afraid of dying, but dying alone, far from home. That was something else. Her hand reached out to a broken escape pod nearby. Its door was open slightly, just enough for her to slide in. With the last of her strength, she pulled herself inside. Darkness wrapped around her like a blanket. Inside, it was cold and silent. She curled up, breathing slowly. She closed her eyes, let the pain fade. She was ready. This was her end. But the universe had other plans, somewhere far from the battlefield. A man named Sam sat in a small cabin on a snowy mountain. He was a former human soldier, now retired. He lived alone with old books, hot tea, and memories that never left him. That night, he saw something strange in the sky. A ball of fire fell from above and crashed deep into the forest near his cabin. He grabbed his coat, flashlight, and an old rifle. Something told him to go. He didn't know what he'd find, but he couldn't ignore it. Hours later, he stood before the wreck of a strange metal pod. It was half buried in snow and smoking lightly. He stepped closer and saw something move inside. Something alive, cautiously. Sam opened the pod's cracked door. Inside was a creature. No, a person, not human, alien. She was breathing slowly, her face pale and strange, her body covered in broken armor. She looked like a warrior, a fighter who had given everything. Sam didn't think. He just acted. He picked her up carefully, wrapping her in his warm coat. She was cold as ice, light as a feather, and barely alive. He carried her through the snow, all the way back to his cabin as he laid her on the bed. Her head rolled to the side and her eyes flickered open. For just a second, she looked at him, confused, a human. Then her eyes closed again, and her body went still. Sam checked her breathing. It was weak, but still there. He whispered, "Hang on, warrior. You're not done yet." Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the crash site, covering her footprints, covering the war she had run from. Inside the small cabin, warmth filled the room. A fire crackled, a pot of tea boiled, and an alien warrior, who had closed her eyes to die, had unknowingly just begun a new story. The first thing Kylara felt was warmth, not pain, not cold. Not the sharp bite of snow or the burning heat of battle, just warmth, like a soft blanket covering her tired body. Her eyes stayed closed, unsure if she was alive or dreaming. There was no sound of gunfire, no smell of smoke or blood. Instead, she heard birds, soft wind, and something boiling gently in the distance. She opened her eyes slowly. Bright golden light filled the room's sunlight. Not from artificial lamps, but real sun. A wooden ceiling stood above her, with beams and hanging plants. There was a strange smell, earthy, sweet, and peaceful. It confused her. She tried to sit up, but her body cried out in pain. Her side was bandaged, her arm in a sling, and her skin felt heavy and slow. A soft blanket covered her, and she realized she was lying on a bed. Not a metal cot, not the hard floor of a pod, a real bed, soft and clean. Her heart began to race. Where was she? Who had touched her? Why wasn't she dead? She looked around the room. There were books on shelves, wooden furniture, plants in pots, and a fireplace. It looked like something from old human stories, peaceful and quiet. She saw her broken armor, stacked in the corner, carefully placed. Her weapons were gone, but she didn't feel threatened. Footsteps, slow and steady, someone walking nearby. Kylara's eyes sharpened. Her hand moved toward the edge of the bed. But she was too weak to move quickly. Then the door opened. A human man entered, holding a small bowl in his hands. He looked calm, older, with short gray hair and a tired but kind face. He didn't wear armor, didn't carry weapons. He wore a soft sweater and warm boots. The man paused when he saw her awake. He smiled gently. "You're awake," he said, his voice calm like water. "That's good." Kylara narrowed her eyes. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice dry and rough. "My cabin," he replied, placing the bowl on a table near the bed. "I found you in the woods, inside a broken pod. You were half frozen, bleeding badly." Kylara tried to sit up again, gritting her teeth. "You should have left me," she whispered. The man raised an eyebrow. "Maybe," he said, "but I don't leave people to die, not even aliens." She stared at him, confused. Our people had always warned her humans were dangerous, selfish, cold, but this one had saved her. "Why? Who are you?" she asked. "Name's Sam," he said, sitting down in a wooden chair beside the bed. "Used to be a combat medic in the Terran forces. Long time ago, now I live out here, grow my food, drink my tea, and mind my business." Kylara looked at him, really looked. He didn't look like a soldier, but there was something in his eyes, something strong, something that had seen war, loss, pain, just like her. She whispered her name. "Kylara, Sam." Nodded Kylara. He repeated softly, "Nice to meet you." There was a strange silence between them, not awkward, but careful, as if two strangers stood on the edge of a bridge, not sure how to cross. Sam poured some tea into a cup and held it out to her. She looked at it, unsure, then slowly reached out. Her fingers brushed his, and she flinched, but he didn't move. She took the cup and sipped. Warm, sweet, strange, but good. Sam smiled. "That's honey and chamomile," he said. "Helps with pain." Kylara looked down. Her fingers wrapped around the warm cup. For the first time in many days, she didn't feel like a soldier. She felt like someone. "You saved me," she whispered. Sam shrugged. "Did what I could. You were nearly gone when I found you." "Why?" she asked. "Why help me?" He looked at the fire, not answering at first. Then he said, "Because I've been in your place. I bled in the snow, thinking no one would come, and someone did." Kylara stayed silent. That answer was enough. Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees. Birds sang their simple songs. And inside the cabin, two souls, one alien, one human, shared a moment of peace. Kylara leaned back slowly, her body still aching, but her heart a little lighter. She didn't know what would happen next, but for now, she was alive and safe. And maybe, just maybe, she had found something more than just survival. Kylara lay in the bed, her eyes fixed on the human man sitting by the fire. Sam, he said his name was. He moved slowly, with calm hands and quiet steps. He didn't stare at her like a creature or a weapon. He looked at her like a person. The warmth of the tea still lingered in her hands. Her body was healing, slowly, but her mind was full of questions. Who was this human? Why did he help her? Was this all a trick? She watched as Sam picked up a book and flipped through its pages. Then he reached for a small bowl of soup and stirred it without speaking. He didn't ask her questions, didn't try to touch her. He simply existed beside her, peaceful, calm, human. Kylara finally spoke. Her voice low. You used to be a soldier. Sam nodded. Yeah, fought in the Earth-Mars conflict. Then later in the Outer Ring Rebellion, lost a lot of friends, saw too much. She stared at him, trying to understand. You don't seem like a fighter, she said. Sam gave a small smile. That's the point. I fought enough to know I never want to again. Kylara looked at the scar on his hand, a deep one, old and healed. She had one just like it across her back, marks of a life lived in war. You still have weapons, she said, pointing toward the wall where an old rifle hung. Sam glanced at it, just in case, he said. Out here, wolves and raiders sometimes show up, but I haven't fired that in years. She nodded slowly. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't sharp. It felt soft, like snow falling on quiet ground. Sam stood up and walked to the shelf. He picked up a small device metal, blinking faintly. I found this inside. Your armor, he said. Offering it to her, Kylara took it with trembling fingers. It was her family beacon, a tiny signal crystal that carried her DNA code and family name. She looked at it for a long time, her throat tight. Her family. They would think she was dead. You miss them, Sam said gently. She didn't reply. Just held the crystal tighter. He didn't push. Instead, he poured her another cup of tea and placed it beside her bed. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, he said, but if you do, I'll listen. Kylara looked at him, surprised. No one had said that to her before. Not in her army, not even in her own family. Aliens like her were raised to fight, not to feel. Slowly, she spoke. I was born on Thalon Prime, she said, her voice distant, trained since age 5 to join the Honor Corps. I fought in 17 battles. I've killed more than I can count. Sam didn't react. He didn't flinch or judge. He just listened. I wasn't supposed to lose, she continued. We were the best, but our enemies used human tech. Your weapons, your ships, your tactics. They destroyed us. She looked at Sam with sharp eyes. Do you feel proud? Sam shook his head. No, he said quietly. War never makes me proud. It just makes me sad. Kylara stared at him, trying to understand. He was a human, yet he hated war, just like she did. He helped her, even though she was his enemy. None of it made sense. Why didn't you turn me in? She asked. To your people, the military. Sam leaned back in his chair, looking at the ceiling, because they would have locked you up, maybe killed you. And I've seen too much death already. He looked at her again, his voice calm but firm. You're not my enemy, Kylara. You're just someone who's tired and lost, like I once was. Her eyes burned, but she blinked the tears away. She didn't want him to see her cry. Warriors don't cry, her commanders always said, but in this cabin, in this human bed, with this strange man beside her, she didn't feel like a warrior anymore. She felt like a person. You're strange, human, she whispered. Sam chuckled. You're not the first to say that. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the fire cracked softly, and for the first time in years, Kylara felt something new, something small and quiet. Hope. The days passed slowly in the mountains. Snow covered the trees and roof like a soft blanket inside the cabin. The fire kept burning, and Kylara grew stronger. Her wounds healed. Her strength returned, but her mind stayed sharp. She didn't trust peace, not yet. War had taught her that calm never lasted long. Sam cooked meals, tended the garden behind the cabin, and checked on her every few hours. He never asked too many questions, never made her feel trapped. Kylara watched him carefully, still unsure what kind of man he really was. But something inside her was changing. The more she saw of Sam, the more confused she felt. He wasn't like the humans she had fought. He was gentle, quiet, thoughtful. He gave her space. And that was a kind of kindness she had never known. One morning, as Kylara sat near the window, drinking warm tea, she heard a sound, a high, sharp beep, like a signal alarm. She stood up fast, her instincts flaring. Sam walked in with a toolbox, but stopped when he saw her expression. "What is it?" he asked. Kylara pointed to the corner where her armor was kept. From the damaged chest plate, a faint red light blinked. Her emergency tracking signal. She cursed under her breath. "They found me," she said. Sam frowned. "Your people." She shook her head. "No, my enemies. They must have picked up the signal from orbit." Sam placed the toolbox down and stepped toward her. "Can you shut it off?" Kylara nodded and rushed to the armor, pulling off the blinking panel with a sharp twist. She broke the wire and crushed the crystal inside. The light faded, but the damage was done. "They know I'm alive," she said, her voice cold. "They'll come now, maybe tonight." Sam didn't panic. He simply nodded and walked to a wooden chest at the far end of the room. From inside, he pulled out a heavy metal case. When he opened it, Kylara's eyes widened. Inside were weapons, old but strong, human-made plasma rifles, stun grenades, and even a short combat blade, all polished and ready. "You said you hated war," Kylara whispered. "I do," Sam said, "but I'm not stupid. I knew someday trouble might find me again. Guess today's the day." Kylara looked at him. Not as a healer, not as a peaceful man, but as a warrior. And suddenly, she respected him even more. "We need to set traps," she said. "Hide the cabin's heat signature. Watch the skies." Sam nodded. "I've got old camo nets and thermal jammers. You take the north side. I'll cover the back." Together, they moved like soldiers. Their bodies different, their pasts full of war. But their instincts matched perfectly. They dug into the snow, set motion alarms, checked power cells. For hours, they worked in silence. But it was a silence of understanding. By sunset, the cabin was hidden under a thick layer of snow netting. The windows were blacked out, the lights dimmed. Kylara sat near the door with a rifle in her hands, her face calm but focused. Sam sat across from her, holding a hot mug. "I should have guessed you were some kind of elite soldier," he said. "You moved like one." Kylara gave a small smile. "I was," she said, "but not anymore." "You still are," Sam replied. "Just resting." They both looked out the window, watching the dark forest. Then, in the distance, a light moved, then another and another. Kylara's grip tightened. "They're here," she said. Sam stood up and walked to the back door. "I'll cover the rear," he said. "You hold the front." She nodded, no fear in her eyes. "Only fire, if they take me," she said. "Don't follow. I didn't bring you back to die." Sam said quietly, "And I don't plan to let you go." Kylara blinked at him, surprised by the strength in his words. It wasn't just duty, it was care. Outside, the forest rustled. The snow was no longer quiet, and two souls, one human and one alien, stood ready. Not as enemies, but as a team. Kylara whispered to herself, "I closed my eyes to die, but now, will fight to live." And just outside the cabin, the first shadow moved through the trees. The night was long and full of waiting. Kylara sat near the front door, her body still but alert. Outside, the snowstorm had calmed, but the air was heavy, like something was hiding just beyond the trees. Her rifle rested across her knees, her Sharp eyes scanned the shadows, every movement. Every flicker of wind against branches made her ears twitch. But there was no sign of attack. Not yet. Sam returned from the back of the cabin. Moving quietly, he gave a short nod. "Nothing behind us," he whispered. "But they're out there." Kylara nodded, her eyes never leaving the darkness beyond the window. She could feel it. Someone was watching, waiting. They sat in silence. For hours, side by side, no words, no small talk, just quiet understanding. The fire burned low, giving off a soft orange glow. Sam placed a blanket across Kylara's legs without saying a word. She glanced at him, surprised, but didn't protest. For a moment, her mind drifted not to war or pain but to him. This human, who made tea, who grew vegetables, who fought without hate. He was a mystery. And he made her feel something she couldn't name. Later, as the sky turned deep blue with the coming dawn, Kylara finally spoke. "You didn't have to do this," she said, her voice quiet. "You could have left me." Sam leaned back in the chair. Tired but calm. "I know," he said. "But something told me not to." She looked at him closely. "Why?" He shrugged. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to want to give up, and maybe I just wanted to help someone this time, before it was too late." Kylara looked away, hiding the emotions rising in her chest. She was not trained for kindness, not raised to trust it. But here, in this cabin, with this strange human, she felt safe. Sam stood and walked to the fire, poking it gently. He added more wood, then turned to her. "You hungry?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. He smiled and moved to the small stove. Soon, the smell of cooking filled the room. Eggs, bread, and herbs, simple but warm. Kylara's stomach growled, and for the first time in days, she laughed. Just a small sound, barely more than a breath. But it was real. Sam turned and smiled. "That's a good sound," he said. She looked at him, and this time, she didn't look away. "You're not like the others," she said. "Neither are you," he replied. They ate together in silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like two soldiers who had finally laid down their weapons. After breakfast, Kylara stepped outside. The snow crunched under her boots, and the cold air hit her lungs. But it felt good. She looked around the mountain, the forest, the wide sky above. No ships, no enemies, just stillness. Sam joined her, hands in his coat pockets. "They didn't attack," he said. "Not yet." Kylara nodded. "They're waiting for the right moment, but so are we." Sam looked at her face, then said, "You know, I don't even care who wins your war." She glanced at him, puzzled. "Then why help me?" He smiled softly. "Because sometimes it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about who needs help." She didn't respond, but her eyes softened. That simple sentence touched something deep inside her, something she had buried. Under years of battle and loss, they walked back inside together. She placed her rifle on the table, no longer holding it like a shield. He poured 2 cups of tea, and they sat again by the fire. For the rest of the day, they said little, but there was a bond between them now, stronger than words, forged in silence, in shared fear, in quiet moments. Kylara watched Sam as he repaired an old radio, his hands steady, his focus deep. He was calm in a way that made her heart ache. He had found peace, something she thought she would never have. And now, for the first time, she wanted it too. The sun dipped behind the mountains, and Kylara placed her hand gently on the edge of the table. Her fingers brushed against Sam's, and this time, she didn't pull away. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. 2 warriors, once from different worlds, now sat in one room, breathing the same quiet air, and though danger still lurked beyond the trees, something stronger had grown between them, trust, and something like the beginning of love. *, the snowstorm returned just after sunset. Winds howled through the trees, and the air turned bitterly cold. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled, but even its warmth couldn't calm the unease Kylara felt in her chest. She stood by the window, watching the trees sway violently. Her eyes scanned the darkness, alert, waiting. Sam was checking the last of the motion sensors at the back of the cabin. Every few minutes he returned with updates, calm and steady. But something was wrong. Too quiet, too still between the gusts of wind. They're coming. Kylara whispered to herself, not in hours, but minutes. Sam reloaded his old rifle and placed extra rounds in his belt. Kylara strapped on what was left of her armor. The chest piece cracked, but her spirit firm. "You sure you're ready?" Sam asked, looking at her closely. Kylara nodded without hesitation. "I've been ready since the day I opened my eyes in your bed," she said. "But this time, I've something worth protecting." Sam gave a small smile and handed her a stun grenade. "Let's give them a fight they won't forget," he said. A sharp beep echoed from the cabin wall. The outer sensors had triggered. Kylara moved to the front window and spotted faint red lights blinking between the trees. "Stealth suits," she said. "Elite hunters. They won't speak. They'll come to kill. Fast and quiet." Sam checked the rear again. "We hold them here," he said. "We don't run." She gave him one long look, then nodded. No running. Seconds later, the first attack began. A loud crack of glass shattered the window, followed by a flash of blue light. Kylara ducked and rolled. Raising her rifle and firing at the dark shadow outside, her shot hit the figure. Dropped, sparks flying from its suit. Sam fired from the back door, dropping another attacker trying to climb over the shed roof. Smoke filled the cabin as Kylara threw a stun grenade outside. A blinding flash lit the snow, followed by screams. The enemies were well trained. Fast and silent, but Kylara was faster. And this time, she wasn't alone. Sam moved like a man who had survived more battles than he could count. He covered her without hesitation, reloading quickly, adjusting angles. They moved like they'd fought together for years, but the enemy numbers grew. They came in waves. Pushing closer each time, Kylara got cut across her leg and Sam took a hard hit to his shoulder. Blood mixed with snow, smoke filled the air. Inside the cabin, fire began to spread from one wall where a plasma shot hit the logs. Kylara grabbed Sam, pulling him behind the table now flipped over as a shield. "You okay?" she asked quickly. He winced, holding his shoulder, still breathing. She looked into his eyes, then something deep in her snapped. She stood and stormed toward the front, her rifle empty, but her hands burning with fury. One of the hunters rushed at her, blade drawn. She grabbed the attacker mid-swing, twisted his arm, and slammed him into the snow. Another came from behind, but Sam shot him just in time. His shot clean and fast. They fought side by side until the last wave hesitated. Kylara stood in the snow, her armor glowing faintly, her body bleeding but strong. She raised her broken blade high, a cry of rage and strength echoing through the mountains. The enemy paused just for a moment. That was all she needed. With a final burst of energy, Kylara charged. She fought with bare hands, her alien strength unstoppable. Sam limped forward, throwing the last of the grenades. The explosion lighting up the woods, and then silence, smoke, wind, and broken branches, but no more shadows. Kylara fell to her knees, breathing hard. Sam rushed to her side. Despite the pain in his shoulder, "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," she whispered before collapsing in his arms. He carried her back inside, the fire nearly out. The cabin broken but still standing. He wrapped her in blankets, checked her wounds, and stayed awake all night, watching over her. Outside, the forest began to calm again. Stars peeked through the fading smoke, The enemies were gone. And for now, peace had returned. Sam looked at Kylara, her face peaceful despite the blood and bruises. He brushed a lock of her hair away and whispered, "You're safe now," but deep down, he knew this was not the end. Something had changed forever, and their bond formed in silence, battle, and fire would never be the same again. Sunlight poured through the broken window. The snow outside sparkled like tiny stars on the ground. The forest was silent again, as if the battle had never happened. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled low. Kylara opened her eyes slowly, blinking. At the warm orange light, her body ached, her muscles sore, but she was alive, not just alive safe. She turned her head and saw Sam sleeping in the chair beside her. His shoulder was bandaged. His face looked tired, but peaceful. He hadn't left her side, not even after the fight. Kylara stared at him for a long time. This human, who had every reason to fear her, had stayed. He had fought beside her, bled beside her, and never asked for anything in return. She sat up slowly, wincing at the pain. Sam stirred and opened his eyes. "You're awake," he said softly, a small smile forming. Kylara nodded, her voice low. "You didn't run, I told you," Sam said. "I'm done running." They sat in silence again, the kind that had become comfortable between them. Not heavy, not empty, just peaceful. Outside, birds chirped softly, and wind moved gently through the trees. Kylara looked around the cabin, now scarred by battle, burned walls, cracked wood, broken glass, yet it still stood. Just like her, Sam followed her gaze and said, "I can fix it. It'll take time, but I can rebuild." Kylara looked at him, her heart pulling in a way. She didn't understand. "I should leave," she said quietly. "My people? They might still be looking. The enemy might return." Sam nodded slowly, but didn't speak. She could tell he didn't want her to go, and, deep down, she didn't want to leave either. She looked down at her hands, rough and scarred. Once made for war, but maybe now they could be used for something else. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Sam's voice was steady, but filled with something deeper. "Only if you want to," he said. "This cabin's big enough for two." Kylara smiled, small, but real. "I don't know how to live in peace," she said. "I don't know how to be anything but a warrior." Sam looked at her and replied, "Then we'll learn together." Days turned into weeks. The snow began to melt, and green leaves returned to the trees. Kylara helped Sam rebuild the cabin. They fixed the windows, repaired the roof, and cleaned the burn marks from the walls. At first, her hands shook when holding tools instead of weapons, but slowly, she found rhythm. She planted seeds, chopped wood, and fed the chickens Sam kept behind the shed. Every night, they sat by the fire. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they said nothing, but they were never alone. One evening, Kylara stood by the garden, watching the sky. Stars blinked above her. She thought of her people, her past, the battles she had survived. But now, she didn't feel like a soldier anymore. She felt like something new, something whole. Sam stepped beside her, handing her a mug of tea, thinking of leaving. He asked gently. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I've found something here I never thought I would." "What's that?" he asked. "Home," she replied. He smiled and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. They stood together under the stars, two souls from different worlds, bound not by war, but by choice, by trust, by something that didn't need words. Kylara whispered into the wind, "I closed my eyes to die, but I woke up in a human's bed, and now I want to live." And as the stars watched over them, a new life quietly began, not just for her, but for them both.